Hello, this is Emily of Fluid Artist M on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Today I'd like to do a little bit of an instructional video on how I mix my paints and do my pours for specifically like the ring pours, because I do use a different ratio of mixture and things depending on the type of technique that I'm doing. So this is a ring pour that I did recently. It's all, dry now. I just posted this one on TikTok yesterday and got a lot of comments asking how I mix my paints and what kind of paints I use and what I mix them with and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to briefly go over that today and then do a demonstration of a ring pour like this. So yes, so this is American Floetrol by Flood. It's latex based. It's a paint additive. It's really made for house paint, but a lot of people use it for pouring because it's inexpensive and it's just good for extending, mixing with the paints and extending the flow and making it pourable and more liquid and all that. So yeah, this runs about $15 at Home Depot or Lowe's. So yeah, it's, very inexpensive compared to other professional pouring mediums. Like this is my Liquitex Basics professional pouring medium. I got the gallon bucket of it, and I just kind of pour it into the bottle just to make it easier to use. So lately I've been experimenting with my ratios a little bit. So I've been mixing about let's see, about 3 to 4 parts of the Floetrol and about 1 part of Liquitex pouring medium. And I will mix that, pre-mix it in another Liquitex thing that I have here. So this one says Floetrol and pouring medium on it. So usually when it gets empty, I'll fill it to like maybe this line with Floetrol or maybe a little bit lower, and then fill it like to here or whatever with pouring medium. So I don't know, that's probably more than 4 to 1, but I don't know. I used to use more pouring medium, but it's expensive and the Floetrol is just a lot cheaper, and so I've been trying to use less of the pouring medium and use a little more of the Floetrol lately. Some people use water in their pours. I do not. I did when I was starting out, and I prefer not to. I just don't like using water in my paints, and that's just a personal preference, so it's totally fine to use water in your paints. But yeah, I found I get better results when I do not. So that's kind of where the Liquitex pouring medium comes in, because it's very, very liquidy. It's very runny. But this will alter how your paintings dry. This stuff dries very quickly, and it's also very sticky. So it can be, a little bit of a pain to work with. But it's good at thinning out the paints a little bit more if you need to thin them out instead of using water, or also just adding a little bit of professional pouring medium helps, I feel like, to keep the paint pigments from, it helps to bind the paint pigments and make it a little more permanent, keep them from kind of breaking up and stuff like that. So the Floetrol, however, is made specifically to extend drying time. So if you just use Floetrol, it's going to dry a lot slower, which is actually a good thing, because you don't want it to dry very quickly, because if the top layer, the surface of the paint, dries, or no, I'm sorry, if the bottom of the paint dries faster than the top, it will crack or craze and cause issues and things. So extending the drying time is actually good. But yeah, it's all personal preference. Some people use glue, some people use just water, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can do. So, you know, look up various recipes and ways to do that. And yeah, so this is just my personal way of doing things that I've been evolving over the past year and a half-ish. So yeah. What I like to do is mix, I got a bunch of these different size bottles from Amazon, and so I mix mostly the colors that I use a lot, like, you know, the bright aqua green, turquoise, you know, quinacridone magenta, white, black, my gold, because those are colors that I use in just about every pour. So I do that ahead of time with the main colors that I use, because it saves time and energy. So when I want to paint, I can just literally sit down and just, you know, do it. But you know, you starting out, you're gonna probably be mixing up your paints in, you know, like small cups, with you know, popsicle sticks like this, and that's fine too. Mixing them by hand, I definitely recommend starting out, because it will help you find the right consistency for what you you know, want to achieve. So as far as brands, I use a lot of Artist's Loft from Michaels. These are very popular with paint pour people. They're fairly inexpensive. These bottles are about $10 usually, and you can often get them on sale. So I have that for white and black. And then, you know, just other, you know, this is an example of Artist's Loft. There's the 4 ounce and then the 8.45 fluid ounces. So yeah, these are the tubes. And then I use also quite a bit of Liquitex Basics. These are their big tubes. These are their smaller tubes. These paints are pretty thick, pretty opaque. Some of them are more opaque than others. And you'll find that on the tubes here. This one is like semi-transparent. This one is fully opaque. So you know, you'll figure that out as you go also. I have a couple things from Blick. So just really any acrylic paint is fine. I even started out using craft paint. This is one of my go-to golds, and also silver. I have actually quite a few different of the metallics of these, because they're really great at making cells like on their own without having to do a lot. These are DecoArt Extreme Sheen metallic paints. This is 24K gold. This is silver. So I use this one a lot. But lately, more so, I've been using, this is actually one of my favorite kinds of paint that I've tried so far. This is Creative Inspirations from Jerry's Artorama. I order online, and they're pretty inexpensive for a good amount of paint. And they're really good quality. They're thick, but they're very blendable with the pouring medium, and the colors are, you know, very nice. I have a whole bunch of these, and I use them a lot. So lately, this has been my go-to gold. I've also used this silver quite a bit. This I need to get, they're always out of the bottle like size of this one. This is metallic bronze, but it's actually like a reddish copper, metallic, slightly like iridescent color. It's so pretty, it like glows. And then I have a couple of these Lucas Krill Studio, also from Jerry's Artarama. This is indigo, which I use a lot. I have a couple of their tube ones, like this Arctic color, which is like a pale icy blue, which is really nice. And then just a few odds and ends, like this Pebeo Studio Acrylic. This is iridescent blue-green from Blick also. Very pretty color. And then I do have a number of Amsterdam acrylics, which I use occasionally. You know, I tend to use the same types of colors over and over. I don't use colors like this very often, so they're just kind of hanging around, but Amsterdam is also a really good brand. I ordered those from Blick also. I'm sorry, Jerry's Artarama also. As far as canvases, I tend to either order them from Michael's or Jerry's Artarama. They both have good canvases. Lately I've just been buying the really cheap like value packs. Like this was a pack of this is a 10 by 10, and this came in a pack of 8 from Michael's for $9.99, no, $10.99. These are the most basic ones that you can get. These are back stapled. They're, you know, they're not artist quality, but they're inexpensive, and I definitely recommend those, you know, kinds of value packs when you're starting out. And then there's ones like this one. This one is from Michael's. This is a level 2 Artist Loft level 2 gallery wrapped canvas, so you can see how the back is done. It's like folded in and then stapled, and it's just a lot cleaner and nicer and like sturdier, better quality. So this one is an 8 by 8. So yeah, there's, you know, different canvases. You can try different ones from different places and see what you like. So yeah, I think that about does it. A lot of my supplies when I was first starting out, I ordered just from Amazon because it was, you know, I started pouring in the winter, and then it was COVID like right after that, and couldn't go anywhere. And so I ordered a lot of stuff from Amazon. So I'll have actually a link posted in the description of this video, which will be my Amazon affiliate link. So that, you know, if you click through my link and buy anything you buy from Amazon through my link, is supposed to give me maybe like a couple cents from that, I think. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but just a, you know, disclaimer. But I will have, you know, a list on there of all the kind of useful things for pouring that I ordered when I started out, like a pack of these jumbo push pins, which I like to use push pins because you can pick up the canvas and put it down again. And you know, some people like to use cups or whatever to kind of elevate it, but I definitely am a push pins person. These are a nice size. They're fairly easy to push in, and I got those from Amazon. So I'll have a link for those. You know, I'll have a link for like cups, various sizes. I have a couple different sizes that I use. You know, link for like sticks and like silicone oil if you know, if that's your thing, you're looking to use some silicone. Various, you know, the paint brands that I use on there and that kind of stuff. So things that you want to have starting out, most important things are something to use as a pouring medium, paint, cups, sticks to mix the colors, canvases. And then things that are sort of optional but you know, that make it a lot easier that I would recommend getting are like the push pins for the canvases. These puppy pads are fairly inexpensive. I got a box of this. I think it's like 20 by 20 something. I got like a box of 100 of these for like, you know, 20 bucks or something. I think that'll be on my Amazon list also. These are good because they soak up the paint that falls, and it's good for if you're, you know, worried about making a mess. Like, they're just really handy. So you don't have to be cleaning up, you know, paint and stuff everywhere. And I usually use these for multiple pours, and I'll use like the front and the back for different things. And, you know, when you're done, you can just fold it up and throw it away, and the paint all soaks in. So that's really nice for cleanup. Yeah, so there's that. There's torch. I actually, when I started out for a couple months, I did not have a torch, but I finally got one. And even after I got it, I was scared to use it. This is a butane torch. It's like a kitchen torch, like a culinary torch, but I use it for paint, obviously. So I got this on Amazon. I'll have a link for this as well. And I also actually, believe it or not, ordered myself a can of butane on Amazon, which took weeks to come because of, you know, shipping restrictions and stuff. But you know, you can get this stuff probably convenience stores or like Walmart or like smoke shops or, you know, probably cooking stores. I don't know. Like I said, I was pretty much housebound when I started this, and this can has actually lasted me. I've had this since, well, probably over a year now, and there have been, you know, stretches of time where I have not used it. But I've only had to fill this torch, you know, and like a dozen times maybe, and it's still going. So it is getting empty, but yeah, I'll need to replace that soon. So yeah, this is really handy to have for the heat will pop the bubbles in the paint. It also, if you're using silicone, it will help the silicone to kind of rise to the top to create those cells that you're looking for. So I would recommend getting one of these. This was like $13 or something. I mean, it's, you know, really not expensive. A spray bottle for spraying the back of your canvas. I highly recommend doing this. Spraying it with a bit of water, because what it does is it tightens the canvas and helps it not to be like saggy when you pour the paint on top. So I usually always prep my canvases this way. So what I'll do is I'll push the pins in. By the way, this is not going to be a quick video. This is going to be a long video on purpose because it's instructional. It's for people who really want to learn. So, you know, feel free to skip through to the relevant parts if you're looking for specific information. But yeah, just letting you know. Okay, so just spray the back of your canvas, and then I like to use a brush just to spread it out and kind of get it into the canvas a little bit. I like to do this with the canvas laying flat like this so that it doesn't push the canvas out, if that makes sense. Like, if you do it kind of like when you're holding it up like this or something, it can kind of push the part that's not where the wood is. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but yeah, anyway, I've started doing it this way and I like it a lot better. If your corners are warped, which sometimes they do, you can see these are, you know, give it a good spray, wait a couple minutes. If they still look warped, you can try spraying a bit into the corners themselves and kind of, you know, getting in there a little bit with the brush. You know, this just happens sometimes with like the cheaper canvases. But often, the longer you leave it after you spray it, the more it will kind of even out and tighten up. So I usually try to do this step like before I, you know, mix my paints or whatever. So I'll prep the canvas first and just set it aside. You want your canvas to sound nice and tight like a drum when you tap it. So yes, there's that. Okay, so am I missing anything? I don't think so. Oh, if you're using the Floetrol, you probably want to use a strainer to strain it. So what I usually do is, I have a little strainer that is just like a little kitchen strainer, you know, with a handle, that I put over the cup, and then I just pour the Floetrol into it. And then you can use it right out of the cup, or, you know, like I strained this entire, or this was an empty bottle, so I washed it all out and then opened one of my new gallon jugs and strained the whole thing, you know, in stages, and then poured it into here. So this was full of strained Floetrol. I did still find a big booger in it though, so you still have to be careful. It's probably good to, you know, if you're really nervous about getting chunks, probably good to strain it like every time you use it, but sometimes I'm too lazy and I don't want to do that. So yeah, so strainer's helpful. There are also little split cups like this that you can buy. They're getting more popular on Etsy. This one was from a shop, Paint Pour Store. They have an Instagram. This is a 4 ounce. This is an 8 ounce, I think, or no, 12 ounce, 16 ounce. I can't remember. This is a big, big one. Yeah, I will link those in the description also. And then these are ones that I got from a different store that I will also link. And I may possibly have a discount code for these ones. So, but for today, I'm just going to use regular cup because I'm trying to make this like as simple and sort of beginner friendly as I can. So this is how I, you know, started out, and they're perfectly fine. You can just use regular cups like this and it's fine. So I think what I'll do is I'll start by mixing a color just to show you how I do that. Let's see, what color should we mix? Let's mix some phthalo blue because I don't have a lot of that left in my bottle. And actually, I'm going to use a larger cup for that. I do rinse out and reuse. I wash out my plastic cups and reuse them. But yeah, so first I would pour, one other thing that can be handy if you're a beginner, and don't worry, I'll compile a list of, you know, all of this stuff and put it all in the description. But a scale, just a kitchen scale, can be really handy to help you figure out measurements and stuff for paint ratios and things when you're starting out. Maybe I can do an in-depth video on how to measure paint with a scale at some point, but you know, until you get to a place where you can kind of just eyeball it, or, you know, you can tell instinctively by the, you know, consistency, like if it's right or not. That took me a long time to get right. So scales can be helpful. Oh, also gloves. Gloves are good. Your hands will get messy, and it is washable. Acrylic paint is washable with soap and water, so it will come off, like your hands and fingers and stuff. But like, I wear gloves to protect my rings and, you know, my nails, because I don't like getting paint stuck. Once it dries, acrylic paint is permanent, but I mean, you know, eventually it will come off your nails and stuff. But like, I don't like having to like scrub my, you know, fingers and stuff all the time. So I like to wear gloves. I usually use them for multiple pours. You know, sometimes you can wash them off and like use them again. So I'll have a link for these also. I get these on Amazon. And is that it? I think that's about it. That's the kind of most important things. Oh, and, you know, paper towels or like something too, because it is going to get very messy. So these are I got a pack of commercial paper towels from Amazon for my pouring, which I will also link if they still have it available. Okay, all right, I think we're ready now. So I'm going to use, this is my Floetrol plus pouring medium mixture. I'm just using this because it's what I have, you know, already made up, and I don't, if I were to use just Floetrol, I would have to mix all my colors with just Floetrol to make sure that they were all the same kind of consistency and everything, and I don't really have time for that right now. But you know, if Floetrol is all you have, you can just substitute this with Floetrol or whatever, and it'll still work the same. So this part can get a little messy, so I'm going to put some gloves on, and then we are going to get cracking here. Just a note, you know, if you're concerned about health hazards of some of these chemicals and things, I mean, as a general rule, you always want to work in somewhere that has some ventilation. So, you know, open a window or something. Things like this pouring medium and the paints and things are all, I believe they're all non-toxic. But yeah, I mean, like the Floetrol, I'm not sure about how safe it is to use, especially like with, you know, small children and things. So I might suggest, like, if you're gonna do it with your kids, maybe look into the Elmer's glue all recipe instead, which is mainly just, I think it's Elmer's glue and water. There are plenty of videos on that type of thing. I've never used it, but I'm sure that, I mean, who didn't eat glue in school, right? So I'm pretty sure that that stuff would be probably the safest option to use with children, and it's also inexpensive. So yeah, just, you know, use common sense, do your research if you're concerned about you know, health effects of using various materials. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is give this a little shake. I'm gonna pour some of this in first. I just like to do a little pouring medium first, so that the paint, because this paint is pretty thick, I don't want it to get just like stuck in the bottom. So this is a lot. I'm gonna mix up a lot, or, you know, a good amount. So this is the Creative Inspirations Phthalo Blue. I love this. I love this paint. I love this blue. I love everything. I use this to mix with other colors to make other colors. And it's just great. It's a great blue. So I'm gonna sit down for this part. So you just mix until all the pigment is, you know, distributed into the pouring medium. When I'm doing my bottles, I will pour, so like, let's use one of these so you can see. If I'm starting out brand new with a one of these bottles to mix up a bunch of color at once, I will usually do about first I'll fill it about halfway with the pouring medium, or maybe even like 6 ounces, and then fill it until it goes, just squirt the paint in until it goes like up here, and then just really give it a good shake. And it's not always the right consistency. Sometimes I have to adjust them, but at least they're semi-mixed so that I don't have to like do it all, you know, starting from scratch every single time, which is helpful for me because I have chronic pain and stuff, and sitting for long periods of time doing things like that is very, very tedious. So it's nice to just be able to sit down and just start painting right off the bat. So I realize that this part isn't really that helpful, probably to people who have not, like, who, you know, need a really specific kind of formula for mixing paint, but for this, it's going to end up being roughly about, I would say, 2-to-1 pouring medium to paint. And like I said, you can use a scale to measure that by weight. Which is what I would recommend starting out. All right, this looks like a pretty good consistency. So for the ring pour technique, I like to keep my paints a bit thicker because it helps to preserve the lines and the colors and help them, you know, you just get a better result. So kind of what you're looking for is, you know, you want it to run off the stick and make like kind of a mound on a mound. If you hold it really up high, it still kind of makes a mound on a mound, which is good, but yet you need it to flow. You need it to run off the stick. So, so I think this is a pretty good consistency. What I will do is pour my other colors into cups as well, so that, and just mix them in kind of, so I can show the consistency of those as well. Let me drink some water though, I'm talking a lot here. Okay. I'm gonna use my typical kind of colors that I usually do. So, you know, everybody has their favorite kind of color palette. This is Liquitex Basics Quinacridone Magenta, which is just a very beautiful, it dries deeper than this, and it's semi-opaque. So it will, like for instance, mix with the phthalo blue and make kind of a purpley color, and it's just a really nice basic color to have. So let me test the consistency here. All right, that's a little thick, so I'm just gonna put a squirt of this. And you definitely, you know, as much as you can, you wanna try to have all your paints the same consistency, like as close as possible, so that they all flow together when you tilt the canvas. If something is thinner or thicker than the rest of it, it's going to move at a different pace, and it's going to make, it might make things kind of jaggedy lines and things, and that's, you know, not what you want. I think this is still a little bit thicker than the blue. So lately I've been doing some other techniques and experimenting again with thinner paints, using more of like a 4:1 pouring medium to paint ratio, and those are good for like flip cups and straight pours and things where you want it to be a bit thinner to get some cool effects. But yeah, for this we want the thick paints. So I'm gonna do, this is Liquitex Basics Bright Aqua Green, another great color. I just bought a new, a new 8-ounce tube of this because I use it a lot. And as you can see, I wipe off my sticks and reuse those as well. Until they get super caked with paint, or sometimes if they're sitting in a cup of paint for a long time, they get kind of soggy and like warped. But usually I can get many uses out of these sticks. Still a bit thick. This aqua green is a very opaque, this is a fully opaque color because it's got a good bit of white in it. So it tends to be pretty thick. So just adding little bits at a time. A little bit more. These are mixing together a lot easier than, because I already had the paints pre-mixed. If you're doing this from scratch and you're mixing the paint from the tube with the pouring medium, it's going to, might take a little bit extra work and time to mix it together, because the paints might be a little bit chunky at first. Some colors like tend to go kind of chunky, but you know, don't panic if it's chunky. Just mix it up as much as you can and then let it sit for a while so that it kind of dissolves a little bit, and then mix it up some more. If you see a lot of chunks, you can also kind of take the stick and kind of mash it against the side of the cup to kind of break up the chunks, and just keep mixing and mixing, and it will eventually dissolve. Okay, let's see what else. Definitely gold. So I'm going to use my this is the Creative Inspirations gold that I have mixed up in an old varnish bottle that I washed out. This is a really nice gold. It's very bright and shiny. It's pretty similar to my previous favorite gold, the Liquitex Basics just gold. This one, I guess, might be a little bit darker maybe, but they're really similar. It's very, very shiny and gives a nice shimmer. So I'm gonna pour some of this. And I find that metallics, you don't want your metallic to be thinner than the rest of your paints, because it will just kind of make like a film, like a shimmery film over the entire painting, rather than staying in lines like this. So if anything, you could probably just make it like a touch, just a hair thicker than your other paints. But metallics tend to be thicker anyway because of all the mica in them. So you know, it's not that hard to this is actually pretty thin, I think, because of stuff that I was doing. The last paintings that I used this for was is it a flip cup or something where I needed the paints to be a little bit thinner. So I just want to make sure this is not too thin. I love adding metallic colors to my pours because I just love that kind of pop of shine, you know, pop of shimmer that it gives. Gold is my favorite to use, but I've also used silver and bronze and copper and rose gold and all kinds of stuff. But I just think that gold is very like sophisticated looking, and it goes with pretty much every, you know, goes with everything. So okay, so there's that. And should we do some white? We probably should do some white. Sometimes I like to use white in my pours and sometimes I don't. You don't have to. Don't let anybody tell you that you have to use white. But we are going to need a background color. For this. I mean, it's good to have for the ring pour. I think that's pretty good. I'm not gonna do anything with that. Yeah, so I think this is probably fine. We got some good colors here, so I'm gonna go ahead and set up my drink a coffee first. All right, the canvas is over here. As you can see, the corners have evened out. It's nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and layer a cup. And there are charts, there are charts that you can look up online for how many ounces of paint you need per how many inches of canvas. I do recommend, you know, trying to use more paint, possibly a little bit more than you think you might need at first, until you can get a feel for, you know, exactly how things are going to go. But it's better, in my opinion, to use too much paint than not enough, because having to kind of scramble to cover, you know, corners and edges that, you know, when you run out of paint and stuff, and it can be kind of stressful, at least for me. Some people are fine with it. I prefer to make sure that I have plenty of paint for that. So yes. Okay, so this is a 5-ounce cup. This should be fine for 10 by 10. And this is how I recommend layering So what I do is you can kind of pour it down the side a little bit, so that if you want more distinct layers, you need to make sure that if you pour it down the side, it doesn't mix together as much. Whereas if you were to just pour it right in, it would mix kind of in the cup, which is you know, that's a style on its own, but that's not what we're trying to do here today right now. So gold might be a bit thin, but that's all right. Not a tragedy. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna do blue. This blue feels pretty thin too, actually. It shouldn't be. So something to keep in mind when you're layering your cup is that what you pour into the cup first is what's going to be on top, like it's going to come out of your cup last. So I like to start out with just small layers in the bottom, like very little bits of paint, and you'll see why. And then once you have, you know, kind of the main colors like that are going to be in the center, you can kind of make the layers a little bit bigger or thicker if you want to. There's no real like right or wrong way to layer the cup. You just kind of do it however. All right, and then I'm just gonna pour a little bit of white, because I'm gonna have white in my center. So now what I'm gonna do, set that aside. I'm just gonna pour a little bit extra pouring medium into my leftover white to use as a base. Because you want your base to be a little bit thinner than the rest of your paint, so that it slides around easy. All right. So what most people do for a ring pour like this is, I mean, you can just pour it directly on the canvas, which is fine. Some people pour just like a little puddle in the middle. You know, some people cover the whole canvas, which I actually do like to do that. So there's different ways you can do that. Some people use a thing to kind of spread, you know, like a spatula or something to spread the base coat out. I just kind of tilt it around. This is not going to be quite enough paint for the entire thing. Just scrape what's left in here. Like I said, this part is optional. I personally really like to have all of my, like, you know, for at least for techniques, especially for the ring pour like this, I like to have all of my corners covered, my sides covered, everything covered, because I find that it helps with the tilting process. It helps the paint to just flow unimpeded, which keeps the shape better. But, you know, everybody does it differently, so it's totally up to you. Like I said, this is not quite enough to cover everything, but wherever there is paint already, that's where the paint is going to want to flow. So if you have a dry spot on the canvas, the paint may just kind of flow around it instead of flowing over it. So that's why I like to use a base coat like this. And then this part is also optional, but you can give it a torch to pop the bubbles. Do not get too close to the paint because you can burn it. And that will create a little skin on top of the paint, which is not going to be fun to have to deal with. But yeah, you don't need much, just to pop some of the obvious bubbles. Like I said, it's optional. Okay, so now we are going to pour, and I'm going to sit down for this part because my back hurts. So what you can do is you can kind of pinch the cup to make it a little bit of a, you know, funnel, little, what's the word I'm looking for? To make it come out a little bit nicer. That part's optional too. It's a little bit harder with a plastic cup. If you use paper cups, it's a lot easier. But yeah, so I'm gonna just pinch it a little bit at least, so it kind of has a little bit of a spout there. And then I'm gonna hold it fairly close to the canvas. And at first it's just gonna blob out because it's full, but you get close to the canvas and then you just slowly go in a circle for the ring pour. I mean, you can, you know, you can do other designs, you can go all over the canvas, you can do whatever you want, but this is the typical traditional ring pour. And then once you kind of start to get to the end of the paint, it just gets smaller and smaller. Just go until you have a nice little, you know, if you can get it out of there without dripping or anything, that's good. Wow, this phthalo blue really took over, didn't it? But don't worry, once we stretch it out, the lines will open up. So what am I doing? Oh, yes, I was gonna say, if your edge in there like ends up a little bit wonky, you can just take something like a thin paintbrush. My hands are very shaky, but you know, just kind of swirl it just a little bit to make it nicer in the middle. That's optional as well, but it's, you know, something you can do. So at this point, I usually like to torch it again. It's gonna have quite a few bubbles in there because we just poured a whole bunch of paint liquid onto, you know, into a puddle basically. So this is gonna help like kind of encourage some cells to form. I think the phthalo blue was actually thinner than the rest of my paints. I should have been more careful about testing the paints, like the thickness against each other before. Like, I recommend before you're about to pour, once your paints are all mixed up, you just test them all one more time to make sure they're even, but you know, it's not that big a deal. All right, so now that we have this, we're going to stretch it out. So usually I like to go kind of from one corner to another. Just pour it off. Bring the paint back to the middle. I usually go off the opposite corner. Bring it back to the middle. Then I usually go up this way. This is just me. Everybody has their own way of tilting. That's kind of unique to them. This area here. All right, and now we're just going off the opposite end, or corner rather. And then we go back to the middle and see how we like it, how it's looking. Yeah, so I mean, that's it really. If your corners are still bare, you can just kind of dip your finger in the puddles to cover it. Pardon my head. If you can see it, I don't know. So yeah, this actually, the paints, I did mix them slightly thinner than I meant to, but you know, that's okay. It happens, it's fine. So I'm just trying to decide like if I like these kind of rainbowy things on the edges. I think they're kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll leave them. But when your paint is thinner, you want to make sure you don't leave too much paint on the canvas, because if it's thinner, it's going to continue to spread and it will drip, and the drips will dry as drips. And sometimes it can, if your canvas is like uneven, it can all slide off to one side and like drastically change the composition and things like that. So that's all, you know, stuff that you need to be mindful of, but it's really just trial and error. So, you know, you'll learn as you go. I definitely had some paint, you know, mishaps with things, paint like sliding off and uneven canvases, and you know, it happens to everybody, so don't worry too much. I like pouring because it's basically controlled chaos. You know, you can control the process, but you cannot control the outcome. Like, literally, no matter what you do, things will happen. It will turn out different than you think it will. You can't control the final product, you know, the final outcome. So in that sense, it's kind of fun. Yeah, so there we go. If you don't have a scraper tool like this, like a spatula thing, you can just use your finger, or you can use a popsicle stick. That's what I, you know, would use at the start. And so once you have it tilted the way you want it, you just carefully go underneath and just scrape off the paint under the edges, because that will be dripping. And if you just let it drip, it's gonna keep kind of pulling the paint off the canvas as it drips. So you may need to scrape it a couple of times. You may need to come back, depending how, like, you know, a couple of factors. You may need to come back a couple of times over, you know, a couple hours or whatever, and keep checking it, see if it needs to be scraped again, if it's developing drips. But yeah, that's basically it. Now, typically, I will show you a close-up in a minute, but typically I will set this. I have another ledge up on my desk here with some silicone mats, and I will place this once I'm convinced that it's all scraped and, you know, everything is good. I will place it up on one of the mats and just leave it there for like 2 days to dry. Sometimes they dry faster, sometimes, you know, it takes a while. And then I will move it to what I call my curing rack, which is a shelving unit, because even once it's dry to the touch, it's going to need several weeks to cure completely. The paint needs to have all the moisture leave the paint and become completely dry, so that it will be permanent, and then nothing can touch it after that. You can literally, my standard is about 3 weeks for full curing. And at that point, if you've used silicone in a pour or whatever, you can even wash it with soap and water, like with a paper towel, and the paint won't come off. And then you can varnish it, or, you know, whatever you want to do. But yeah, you should give it 3 weeks or so, maybe more, maybe longer, for like if it's a really big canvas. But yeah, 3 weeks is about my minimum for curing. So, but this should be dry, like dry to the touch, in If you're only using Floetrol, it will probably take 48 hours. Since I'm using a little pouring medium, it might be a little less time. The pouring medium dries very, very fast. But yeah, so also one more thing, you want to try to keep it somewhere where it's going to be out of the way, so not jostled or, you know, bumped, where it might potentially get messed up. You also want to keep it away from animals, children. If you want to cover it to keep like dust and pet hair and things from getting in it, I have a couple of cardboard, like large cardboard boxes that I just cut, like, you know, like a tunnel. I just cut some out of each end, and you can just sit that over it. And you want to make sure that, you know, it does have some air circulation so that it can dry, but you don't want to have any moving air. Like, you don't want to have a fan on blowing air on the paint or anything, because that's gonna dry the surface. What I said before, I think I said it wrong. I said if the paint underneath is thinner than the paint on top. I mean, I guess either way, but if you have moving air blowing on the canvas, on the paint, it's going to dry the surface quicker than what's underneath, and that will cause it to crack. So yeah, you want to avoid that. So yeah, just a few tips to help you get the best results for, you know, drying your painting and preserving a nice piece of artwork. All right, so that's that. I'm going to wipe my hands, and then I will bring you down and show you the finished painting. All right. So here it is. I like to go in for a close-up so you can see all the little details. You can see the shimmery gold. But if you look at it from the other, you know, a different angle, it kind of disappears, so you can see more of the depth. Here's that center. That part is really cool. This part, you know, the rings got a little rainbowy in here because of the magenta, which, yes, the problem here, it turned out very blue because my phthalo blue, I think it's more of a transparent color. It's used a lot for like mixing other colors, and I made it just a little too thin, and it kind of mixed with everything and took over. So, but you know, that's what I mean by controlled chaos. You know, you can try to do things a certain way, but you're never quite sure how it's going to come out. So this part up here is nice. It's like shimmery. This is really cool. So yeah, that's how I do my ring pours, more or less. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions. Please let me know, you know, if there's anything else you'd like to learn about from me. Also, this painting, I guess, when it's dry, I guess it will be available for purchase if, you know, if anybody is interested. So I am currently setting up a shop, and I will post the link for that as well, probably under this video as soon as, you know, I have everything set up. So yeah, meanwhile, please check me out on Instagram, YouTube, which I guess you're watching now, and TikTok at Fluid Artist M, same on all three. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to check out my list of Amazon. Like, I'll have a lot of this stuff linked on Amazon, so you can go check that out if you're looking to get some supplies to get started and just have fun with it. That's the main thing. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.